However, the heat will start to build through the weekend. A fine summer's day for the vast majority tomorrow. Some rain likely across northern parts of Scotland, spreading across the Northern Isles. A few showers over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but sunny spells through the Central Belt, Northern Ireland and for most of England and Wales. And temperatures tomorrow still fairly pleasant for most places, low to mid-20s, maybe high 20s across the southeast, and cooler with the cloud and rain further north. It's what happens really through Sunday, Monday and Tuesday that's the problem. With high pressure shifting away, we are drawing up hot air, really hot air from Spain and Portugal. Extreme heat is likely through Monday and Tuesday. The Met Office have issued warnings. For more details on those warnings and advice about what to do, visit the Met Office website. Bye for now.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing, your afternoon fix of all the latest political news, debate and analysis. I'm Arlene Foster and here's what's coming up over the next hour. Yesterday saw the Tory leadership contest whittled down to 5 after Conservative hopeful Suella Braverman was the candidate that received the least amount of votes. I'll speak to a supporter of the dark horse candidate, Penny Mordaunt, about the latest in the race for the Tories' top job. British businessman Ryan Cornelius is still being held in prison in Dubai, while family and friends are crying out for help to bring him back to the UK. I will be speaking to Lord Clement Jones, who has been supporting the family. And the RMT has announced 2 new dates for strikes in August. The travel disruption during the summer keeps growing. Simon Calder, travel expert, will be joining us in the studio. And the battle to find the next Prime Minister has led to the government's flagship online safety bill being delayed until at least after the summer recess. But many have raised concerns about the safety of children on the internet, and I'll speak to a campaigner from the Breck Foundation about the potential implications. And as ever, give me your political briefing. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews.
Good
afternoon, it's 1 minute past 3. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A High Court judge has ruled doctors can lawfully stop providing life support treatment to Archie Battersby. It follows a review of evidence at a hearing in London today. The 12-year-old suffered a catastrophic brain injury 3 months ago. And we can go live now to Alice Porter outside the High Court for us. Alice, what more can you tell us?
BBC News. Hi there. Well, Mr. Justice Hayden described the treatment that Archie Battersby has been receiving as intrusive, burdensome and intense. We heard in court that Archie has become very malnourished, he's become anemic, there's been problems with his digestive system, and therefore Mr. Justice Hayden said he is not able to continuing to live with dignity, and keeping him alive dependent on a ventilator only serves to protract his death rather than to prolong his life, and therefore said that his ventilator should be switched off. That has been very much disagreed with by the family of Archie Battersby, who had two options when it came to appealing the decision, one of which was to ask the judge permission to appeal. That has not been granted this afternoon. He said, Mr. Justice Hayden said it is not likely to cede and that there is no other good reason. So the next thing that they'll need to do is on Monday try and lodge permission at the Court of Appeal to have another appeal, and we do understand from the family that is exactly what they'll be doing.
Alice, thank you. Alice Porter there for us outside court. The remaining 5 candidates in the Conservative leadership race have outlined their plans to tackle the cost of living, the war in Ukraine and the housing crisis. In a warm-up ahead of tonight's first televised debates, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss, Tom Tugendhat and Kebby Badenoch all took part in a public hustings. Meanwhile, eliminated Attorney General Suella Braverman has given her support to Liz Truss, saying she's the candidate to unleash the opportunities of Brexit. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the country needs a new government, not a new Tory leader.
We don't fear any of the candidates because the change that the United Kingdom needs is not a change at the top of the Conservative Party. We've already had 12 years of failure from the Conservative Party. The change we need, the fresh start we need for Britain, is a change of government.
The mother of a British aid worker who was being held in the Russian-occupied region of eastern Ukraine has confirmed he's died. Paul Yuri was captured in late April and was charged with so-called mercenary activities by separatists in the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic. In a social media post, Mr. Yuri's mother said she was absolutely devastated. The Foreign Office has said it's urgently seeking clarification from the Russian government on the reports. A mother who murdered her toddler has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 18 years and 4 months. Carol Hodgson killed 2-year-old Daniel Hodgson Green at her home in North Yorkshire in February. The 40-year-old then tried to take her own life, leaving notes to her family. It happened on the day the boy's father was applying to the family court to have more contact with his son Archie. The Met Office has issued its first red extreme heat warning for parts of England on Monday and Tuesday. The highest alert means there's a danger to life amid soaring temperatures. That as the NHS faces a surge in hospital admissions during the heatwave. Tuesday is expected to be the hottest day, with a chance temperatures could reach a record-breaking 40 degrees. Meteorologist John Hammond says it'll impact everyone and action should be taken.
The impacts will be major. They're not going to last forever. It'll all be over by Wednesday. But for Monday and Tuesday, impacts to infrastructure, transport, health. And I would imagine that many schools will be closed as well, because this country can't cope with 35 degrees. But when we're talking about the potential for 40 degrees, then I think all actions that can be taken should be taken.
And another 2 rail strikes are now taking place next month. RMT members at Network Rail and 14 train operators say they'll walk out on August the 18th and 20th in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. It's after RMT and ASLEF members announced they'll be striking on the 27th and 30th of July. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to the briefing with Arlene Foster.
So yesterday, the battle to become the next leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister hotted up, as Suella Braverman was knocked out from the race, leaving just 5 contenders. Minutes afterwards, she was in good spirit and she spoke to GB News.
We ran a really clear policy platform on illegal migration, on Brexit delivery, on tax cuts, on identity politics. And I have to say, I'm just so blown away by the positive response that I got personally and on my policy platform. I want to thank all of the MPs who voted for me, put their faith in me, my team of MPs who worked incredibly hard, my staff team, the party, the 1922 committee. I just feel a huge amount of gratitude and actual privilege to have just run to be Prime Minister of this country. I think that's awesome.
That's an upbeat Suella Braverman, but now we have 5 contenders left battling to be the next leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister. According to many political pundits, Penny Mordaunt is emerging as the dark horse candidate, staying ahead of Foreign Secretary Liz Truss in recent Tory membership polling. But what next in the leadership race, and could Miss Mordaunt ultimately take the top job? Well, the candidates faced each other this lunchtime in their first public hustings with Tory activists, hosted by Conservative Home website. Let's see some of those highlights.
In this contest, I've outlined the principles on which I will make decisions about tax, but I have not made tax announcements apart from some very targeted and timely support to help with the cost of living. Those decisions are best taken at a fiscal event this autumn. And finally, my focus will be on ensuring that all of our citizens can live in safety and security, maintaining our defence spending and also standing up those things that will make us the most resilient nation on earth. We need a return to Conservative policies, to confidence. We have responsible and capable citizens, and they want their government to be too.
We can create a Britain where the possibilities for the next generation are better than the last, where everyone has the opportunity of a second chance, where an entrepreneur can try again, where a factory worker can retrain. We can create a Britain where the most important part about your success is how hard you work. And we can create a Britain where family is one of the easiest joys, not one of the hardest sacrifices. I want to draw on all wings in our party to build a government, to draw on the enormous talents and capabilities we have, because the challenges that we face are enormous.
What's important is that we deliver on the promises we made to the British people. People across the country are struggling with the cost of living. They need to know that things are going to be different. And I'm the Prime Minister who, together with a really strong Conservative team, can deliver on the ground from day one and make that difference. It's not inevitable that Keir Starmer or Ed Davey are going to win the next election. In fact, I don't think they're very popular at all. But what we have to do is show momentum, to show we can do things differently, to show we can deliver on the promise of Brexit and really open up these opportunities.
I voted leave, and my maiden speech as an MP was to celebrate Brexit as a vote of confidence in the United Kingdom and also in the British people. And I'm standing because I want to renew this party in government and win a historic 5th term. I only decided to enter this race 7 days ago. With a very small volunteer campaign team, I am topping a number of polls and have beaten 6 current or former cabinet ministers. Imagine what we could achieve with you, the activists, and this great party behind me.
I want to work with every community across the United Kingdom to deliver a Conservative victory in May 23 in our councils, and of course, in 24, in the general election, when we will see Conservatives elected across the United Kingdom. We'll do it by levelling up. We'll do it by delivering change. We'll do it by rebuilding trust. We can restore pride in Britain. We can restore pride in our party, and we could restore pride in our government. I look forward to serving you. I look forward to returning to service. I'm proud to be standing as your leader, and I look forward to serving as your Prime Minister.
So that was a roundup, really, from the Conservative Home website hustings, which was held just after 1 o'clock today. And we'll return later to the Tory leadership race. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we brought you the story of British businessman Ryan Cornelius, who is currently detained in the United Arab Emirates. His lawyers and his wife gathered outside the Foreign Office to repeat their demand for Ryan to be released just yesterday. I'm going to welcome back to the show Lord Clement Jones, who you may recall came on to tell us about this case a few weeks ago. He's been supporting the family. And Lord Clement Jones, perhaps you could just give us a brief resume of Ryan's situation, just to bring our viewers and listeners up to date again.
Thank you very much for having me on again, Arlene. And the basic facts of the case are that some 14 years ago, Ryan Cornelius was convicted on a trumped-up charge of fraud in Dubai at the behest of the director of the ruler's court, Mohammed al-Shaibani, and subsequently was convicted for and sentenced to 10 years in jail. After 10 years, his sentence was extended by 20 years under a retrospective piece of legislation that wasn't in force at the time of his original conviction. And I and Simon Hughes, his former MP, took up the case back in 2014. And since then, we've been trying to get the Foreign Office to do something, anything, to help him. And that something has been extremely limited. And the most recent action that was taken was to write to Liz Truss to ask her to put Magnitsky sanctions on Mr. Shaibani. And the UN Committee on Arbitrary Detention has now said that he is indeed arbitrarily detained. We've asked Liz Truss to take that into consideration. And yesterday, we put a petition in, a request in to the Metropolitan Police to investigate Mr. Shaibani for torture for two individuals, one of whom is Mr. Cornelius. So we are trying to pile the pressure on Liz Truss, who, after all, is putting herself forward as a competent candidate for the Tory leadership.
Yeah. And do you think the hiatus in government, which is inevitable when there's a leadership contest going on, Lord Clement Jones, is adding to this? Because the last time we spoke, you had written to the Foreign Secretary. You've now taken a different approach by putting in a submission to the Metropolitan Police. Are you hoping to go in a number of different directions to try and highlight this case?
We're trying to put as much pressure on as you can imagine. We're using every possible avenue. We've been very well served by lawyers acting pro bono, free for the family. Ryan's wife, Heather, and brother-in-law, Chris Paget, have been fantastic in pushing forward this campaign. But at the end of the day, it's got to be the Foreign Secretary who either puts pressure on the UAE or and Dubai, or gets them to issue a clemency ruling by the ruler of Dubai, and imposes Magnitsky sanctions on Mr. Shaibani, who has a great deal of property in the United Kingdom, as does the ruler of Dubai, and therefore would be vulnerable to sanctions. Now, they've been prepared to do that for Russian oligarchs. They should be prepared to do that for somebody like Mr. Shaibani, who was behind the abduction of the two of the ruler's daughters, who wanted to leave Dubai, but he brought them back. And in one case, criminally from Cambridge, Princess Shamsa was abducted. And so he's got a track record, and we have to make sure sanctions are applied.
So I wonder, could you stay on the line, Lord Clement Jones? Just some breaking news from the High Court that I want to go to now, and we'll come back to this. It's very important. So a High Court judge has ruled that doctors can lawfully stop providing life support treatment to a 12-year-old boy who suffered a catastrophic brain injury 3 months ago, and they did this after reviewing the evidence. Doctors treating Archie Battersby say continued treatment is not in his best interest and should end. We're going to go now live to the High Court in London, where our reporter Alice Porter has more details on this very sad case.
Hi there,
Alice.
good afternoon. Yes, Mr Justice Hayden said that Archie Battersby is unresponsive and therefore said it was in his best interests for the ventilator to be switched off. But that's very much not what the family want, and they are going to be appealing that decision. Now, let me speak first to Holly Dance, Archie's mother. Firstly, thank you for speaking to us. I know today and this whole last 3.5 months has been, you described it as an absolute nightmare. So can you just tell me what your reaction is to what you've heard in court today?
I'm not shocked, and I think it's quite obvious the fact that I'm not crying and I'm not showing much emotion, that I'm not shocked today. We expected this outcome today, so...
Now, the judge has said that Archie is unresponsive, but that's something that you very much refuse.
Archie's very much responsive, very much responsive. At the minute, he tends to do a lot of it, what we believe, and it has been noted by nurses as well, 2 particular nurses, that he is responding via the blood pressure and the heartbeat. What can I say? He is responsive.
Now, you're going to be lodging an appeal.
We are.
Some people watching this may be thinking, how far are you willing to go? I mean, you've already fought so much for your...
So I can't go no further. That's my little boy. I've had, obviously not a lot of... people are sceptical, but I've had healers work with Archie and they're all saying he's there and he's asking for more time. I will honour Archie. He wants more time for whatever reason he wants more time for. Whether it's to pull through or not to pull through, I will get my little boy as much time as he needs, so I'll keep fighting for him.
The judge today didn't give permission for an appeal and said that he saw no reason to. What was your reaction to that?
Again, not shocked. Not surprised at all. I knew the first appearance in front of that judge, I knew exactly what to expect, and yeah, it was just, obviously we had to go through that one, but we knew what the outcome would be.
I know you've spoken in court about your Christian faith, and that's a very large part of why you're doing what you're doing. Is that something that you feel that sometimes hasn't perhaps been recognised in court enough?
Yes, most definitely, because obviously the whole symbol of the coat of arms with the call is God and my right. You know, and I think it's been made very clear in the court that what our religious views are and what Archie's beliefs and views are. And again, it's just not been accepted, is it?
It's not been taken into
Yeah, it's not been. You know, it's a little boy sort of thing. Like, who believes it? He wore a cross for over 2 years that he bought out of his own pocket money. Like, every week I'd have to drive to Pitsea to pay £5 off of this cross because he was adamant he wanted this, and he did not remove that cross. The day obviously this happened, I had to rip the chain from his neck. I panicked, I suppose, but apart from that, and when he goes training, that's the only time Archie takes his cross off. You know, he kisses his cross before he trains, so he's got very strong religious views.
And do you feel that those haven't been taken into account by the judges that have looked over this?
I think they've been taken into account. I do think that the judge did listen, but I don't think they've been accepted, to be honest with you. Maybe because of Archie's age, I don't know. You know, words were sort of thrown around like, apparently, you know, Archie's like said this as... Nobody knows Archie like I know Archie. Archie had that conversation in front of Tom. I didn't raise that conversation that them two boys had. It was the boys talking amongst themselves. I think they were talking about not Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, and that Nick Blackwell, the wrestler or the boxer.
Yeah.
What's been the hardest thing that you heard in court today? I mean, there was all sorts of details about Archie's current condition, ways in which he's suffering, his anemia. But for you, what was the hardest thing to hear about your son at such a difficult time?
That I'm with Archie 24/7, and I can honestly say that Archie is stable, and it's not the case what's been put over. One of the things that particularly, or two of the things that particularly stand out for me is that they've said that Archie can't maintain his temperature. He has to have a heating aid, which they're referring to a bear hugger. He hasn't had that for months, not once. He holds his own temperature, so that definitely sticks out for me over anything really. He's stable. The only time his blood pressure drops is when they put him on his right side. So then obviously they said about he has to have this blood transfusion. Well, that was on the first statement that a doctor put in. He hasn't had a blood transfusion. His HB levels are fine. You know, it's quite contradicting evidence, but we can't have anybody in to contradict that, and I'm not medically qualified. So, but I am there 24/7. I've had to educate myself on these subjects.
Now, I know you've got to get back to the hospital right now because you have stayed there ever since Archie was admitted since April. I mean, you haven't left his side.
No, I haven't. Apart from obviously when I do these interviews, I think there was one. I think that might be Channel 5 opposite the road. They'd set up. That was done on one of the court breaks, the lunch break. I think I've gone to GB and Good Morning, where a car was sent for me. Went straight there, come straight back. The interviews were probably about 7 minutes.
So you haven't slept in your own bed since?
No, I haven't been home. I haven't left Archie's side. I sleep in the same room as Archie, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I'll do the same if it was any of my children.
Listen, I know you're heading there right now, so listen, thank you so much for speaking to us in GB News. We've followed the whole story and really thinking of you, so good luck very much for next Monday.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, there you go. That was the family of Archie Battersby, who will be lodging an appeal at the Court of Appeal next Monday on this case that has been going on for a number of months about whether Archie Battersby should stay on his ventilator that he is dependent on to live.
Thank you, Alice, for bringing us that incredibly sad piece of news from the High Court in London. So I just wanted to go back to Lord Clement Jones. Tim is talking to us about Ryan Cornelius and the fact that he is still in what the UN calls unlawful detention in a Dubai prison. And just before we cut off there, Tim, we talked about Maginski sanctions. Can you tell our viewers and listeners what those are, just so that we can understand what you're asking the Metropolitan Police to do?
Well, these were specifically designed for oligarchs and, if you like, international criminals and kleptocrats, people who, you know, have unlawful wealth derived from crime and corruption.
Oh dear, we have lost Tim. He was going to tell us there about the Maginski Acts, which of course gives the power to sanction human rights abusers around the world. And I think Tim might be just back again with us. Are you there, Tim? So sorry, we just lost you there temporarily, Tim.
The vagaries of broadcasting.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, Arlene. But basically, they're for kleptocrats, oligarchs, and they were campaigned for by Bill Browder against initially Russian oligarchs. But they're freezing orders, basically, so that they can't make use of the assets that they've unlawfully acquired or have in countries like the UK perfectly lawfully. There may be property such as is held by Mr. Shaibani in the UK. So it's a very good way of making sure that they cannot move around, they cannot use their property. So it's a way of forcing them into accepting jurisdiction here and forcing them to take certain actions. And we believe that if we had a Maginski order against Mr. Shaibani, that would mean that Ryan would have a much fairer treatment in Dubai and actually might lead to his release.
You and Heather will keep campaigning on this very important case, and we're going to keep talking about it as well here on GB News, and thank you for joining us again today. But also, we obviously asked the United Arab Emirates Embassy here in London for what they thought about the case, and in a statement they said, following a fair trial in which all due processes were followed, Mr. Cornelius was sentenced to 10 years in prison, which was later lawfully extended. All inmates receive medical care as required. We also asked the Foreign Office for a statement, and they said, we are supporting a British man detained in the UAE. We have been in close contact with the UAE authorities to ensure that the welfare of all British people in UAE prisons is met. And so nothing to see here seems to be the tone of both of those statements, but we'll go back on that story again in the near future. But coming up next on The Briefing, Travel expert Simon Calder is going to tell us about the ongoing summer travel situation with rail strikes and, of course, all those difficulties in airports. And we'll discuss the government's decision to delay the online safety bill with a children's online safety campaign group and our own Anaya for Ireland Iman. Before that, let's take a break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So Howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
Welcome back to The Briefing. So the RMT Union has announced 2 more days of real strikes during August on the 18th and the 20th. The news came hours after strikes on the 27th of July were announced and follows huge disruption caused by industrial action on the railways earlier this summer. How bad can it get? So joining me is Eddie Dempsey, Senior Assistant General Secretary of the RMT Union. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, Eddie. And can you talk us through why the union have decided to go ahead with more strike action in August?
Well, thank you for having us on. We've named further strike action because at this point in time, we don't have a pay offer that settles our members' demands in Network Rail. And we have no offer at all in the 14 other companies we're in dispute with. And at the same time, all of the places that we're making deals are in all of the companies that are not controlled by the DfT. So we're achieving settlements in Merseyside, in Scotland, in Wales, in London Underground, Docklands Light Railway, the Eurostar. We're all achieving reasonable deals there. But where the DfT's in control, we're not making progress. And so that's why we've had to name further strike action, really demanded by our members. They're furious about this.
And you mentioned Scotland there, and I, if I'm right, and I hope I am right on this, they agreed a 4% pay rise. What is the current thinking in relation to what is needed to settle this strike for the RMT?
Well, in Scotland, that was a deal struck by ASLEF. We're making progress in Scotland. We haven't made a deal yet, but we've just signed a 7.1% deal in Wales. We've signed similar in Merseyside, 8% in Eurostar. That will give you the flavour. So we're in really troubling times, because when the railway is supposed to be recovering from the health emergency, and it's supposed to be expanding, I think, to be part of the green future and the economy more generally, the government is stripping $2 billion out of the operational expenditure of the railway. But what they're also doing is making sure that private companies' profits are protected. So on the one hand, they're ensuring companies can still make profits. Some of that can still go to tax havens, but workers, they have to have their terms and conditions and their jobs taken away at a time when people ought to be coming out of the health emergency with a view to recover and get the economy growing. So it's a really troubling time for our people, and they're deeply unhappy about that.
Well, and just finally, Eddie, and I really do want to thank you for coming on this afternoon. You will have heard what Grant Shapps has said in relation to the strikes, and you will have heard him say that real workers are risking striking themselves out of a job. I obviously want your reaction to that comment.
Well, we've all seen what happens when employers act against workers in this country. We saw it with P&O when they sacked our members and they were dragged off of ships by men in balaclavas with handcuffs and all the rest of it. The whole country condemned that, rightly so, when it happened at P&O. Now that's happening to our members. Fire and rehire is what's being offered. And we've got the Minister for the Department for Transport now threatening our members with unemployment. I've got to be really clear about this. RMT members will not meekly join the dole queues in this country to protect the profits of companies who've been ripping this country off for years. And that's why we've got the highest fares in the country. I know commuters are going to find it difficult on days we take strike action, but this government, it seems, only cares about workers when they're commuting on days we take strike action. There's still workers on days when they're not commuting. Fares are going through the roof. The cost of living is going through the roof. Energy bills are soaring. Rents are going up. We need to make sure people have got a good standard of living. There's nothing political about this. We're just simply setting out to address an imbalance in power, and we want to make sure working people in this country have got a square deal.
Well, Eddie, thanks for joining us. That's Eddie Dempsey, the Senior Assistant Secretary from RMT. And coming up next, Simon Calder joins me in the studio for an update on what's happening at Heathrow Airport and, of course, those new rail strikes as well. And I'll be joined by the Breck Foundation, who campaign for more robust safety for children online, about the government's decision to delay its online safety legislation. But first, here's Rhiannon with your news headlines.
Arlene, thank you. It's 3:34, your top stories from the GB newsroom. The remaining 5 candidates in the Conservative leadership race have outlined their plans to tackle the cost of living, the war in Ukraine and the housing crisis. In a warm-up ahead of tonight's first televised debates, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss, Tom Tugendhat and Kemi Badenoch all took part in a public hustings. Meanwhile, eliminated Attorney General Suella Braverman has given her support to Liz Truss, saying she's the candidate to unleash the opportunities of Brexit. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the country needs a new government, not a new Tory leader.
We don't fear any of the candidates because the change that the United Kingdom needs is not a change at the top of the Conservative Party. We've already had 12 years of failure from the Conservative Party. The change we need, the fresh start we need for Britain, is a change of government.
The family of Archie Battersby say they may appeal against the latest High Court ruling that doctors can lawfully stop his life support treatment. It follows a review of evidence at a hearing in London today. The 12-year-old suffered a catastrophic brain injury in April. Last month, a High Court judge ruled that he was brain stem dead. A man who was part of a gang that broke into former England footballer Ashley Cole's home and threatened to cut off his fingers has been jailed for 30 years. Curtis Dilks was also ordered to serve an extended licence period of 5 years at Nottingham Crown Court. The judge said the former Chelsea and Arsenal defender and his partner had suffered psychological impacts that can't be overstated. The Foreign Office has summoned the Russian ambassador to express its deep concern following the death of British aid worker Paul Urey, who died whilst in captivity in Russian-occupied Donetsk. Mr. Urey was captured in late April and charged with so-called mercenary activities by separatists in the self-proclaimed republic. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says Russia must bear full responsibility for his death. And the Met Office has issued its first red extreme heat warning for parts of England on Monday and Tuesday. The highest alert means there's a danger to life amid soaring temperatures. Tuesday is expected to be the hottest day, with a chance temperatures could reach a record-breaking 40 degrees. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy $1.185 and 1.177 euros. The price of gold currently stands at £1,439.34 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to The Briefing this afternoon. It's just about 20 to 4. So let's return to the summer travel chaos. We just spoke to the RMT Union, and now I'm joined by Simon Calder to talk about the multiple summer travel chaos. Well, what did you make? You were with me, of course, when the RMT representative was on the line. Simon, what did you make of what he had to say?
Well, effectively turning it very much into a political fight that I am observing the unions are quite comfortable to do, and actually the government in London is also comfortable to do. We've had, as you mentioned, Grant Shapps saying you're striking yourselves out of a job. The unions say effectively what they're saying is that we know the government's got loads of money and we'd like it, thanks. And the argument that the rail industry is in a state of collapse because obviously all the commuters who used to effectively underwrite the whole train set through commuting in, particularly in the London area. Many of those are working from home. They're not buying the season tickets, anything like the same number. The only hope is for leisure travel to come back really strongly. And so interesting, the strikes that we had called yesterday, so it's the train drivers on the 30th of July, that's a Saturday, and the RMT extra strikes they called late last night on the 18th, Thursday of August, and the 20th, which is a Saturday of August, aimed absolutely squarely at holidaymakers and at day trippers. They want to attack cause the most disruption. Understandably, any trade union will want to do that, and they realise that no point targeting commuters, much better to go for families.
Because commuters can stay at home, as you've already said, and that's what happened during those initial strikes. If you were commuting, you just stayed at home, worked from home. But it does hit leisure travellers really, really hard, because if you're coming over for the weekend to London and there's no train, my goodness, what do you do?
Oh, sure, and it, of course, goes far beyond that. It means that all the traders at the seaside resorts aren't getting the people going there. Really important to say, though, that there are some parts of the UK which are not going to be affected.
Sure. Notably
Northern Ireland, and I get so cross whenever people say, oh, yeah, this is the first UK-wide strike for 30 years. No, it isn't.
They mix up UK and the GB quite frequently, Simon, as well, you know.
Northern Ireland Railways is continuing to run an excellent service. And also the Isle of Wight will be operating absolutely normally through these times. But I'm afraid I haven't seen, I know you're far too young to remember the 1980s, but it does remind me very strongly of the kind of government and trade union punch-up that characterised that decade. And it's terrible this is happening, of course. Poor old passenger stuck absolutely in the middle.
Passenger's the one that suffers. And just talking about suffering, I've been looking at a few stories of people having their flights cancelled, of the amount of money they've had to spend. There's a story in the Daily Telegraph today. EasyJet 7-hour flight delay cost our family £1,500. Now, they will be able to claim that back, but it's having to go through all of that process.
It is a shocking summer, and that's why we are seeing, Arlene, extraordinary things happening, like Heathrow Airport saying to the airlines, as it did this week, right, stop selling tickets all summer. You can't sell another ticket, and we're going to ask you to cancel some flights to get the number of passengers down. Anything to avoid these at the gate cancellations.
Yeah.
But the other scandal, and I'm talking to the Civil Aviation Authority about this all the time, is that airlines, when they do cancel a flight, don't give people the full range of options. I was just talking to one of your colleagues at GBNews, had a flight cancelled 7th of August, Bordeaux to London by British Airways, and they did not say, we're really sorry, but as you'll see, there's 3 EasyJet flights that you can travel on, and we are obliged to pay for one of those for you. They simply didn't say that, so they've lost a day of their holiday. That's the sort of example of when the law's on your side, but the airlines don't tell you what the law is.
It seems like we'll be talking about this for quite some time. Simon, thank you for coming into the studio this afternoon. But we're going to return to the Conservative leadership race now, and joining me to discuss the latest is the Tory MP and Penny Mordaunt backer, James Sunderland. James, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Of course, this isn't just about the leadership of the Conservative Party, it's about the new Prime Minister for the United Kingdom. What makes you think that Penny Mordaunt is the person for that huge job?
Well, good afternoon, Arlene. I think Penny Mordaunt is absolutely the right person. She's got a proven ministerial pedigree. She's been in government since 2015. She's been a Secretary of State twice. She's held many ministerial roles. She's a proven leader. She's a deliverer, but she's also exciting. She's fresh. She's new to the electorate in that respect, and I think she'll be a fantastic Prime Minister.
Yes, new to the electorate, not new to those of us who know politics, but new.
I think we're dropping out, Arlene. I'm really sorry. Okay, not at all. I believe there's a microphone problem in the studio, and I'm obviously very sorry for that, but thank you for the opportunity. I've known Penny a while. She approached me on Saturday morning last week and said, would I please join her campaign team? I was thrilled to do so. She's a very good politician, a good operator. She is a Hampshire MP. She's turned her marginal Portsmouth North constituency into a stronghold, and she's a proven fighter. And what I like about her in particular is that she is fresh, she's new, she's exciting. She's the one candidate who is putting new policies, new ideas to the electorate. She's got a full-time policy team helping her at the moment. She's got a great campaign team behind her. And what's really pleasing is that the campaign that we're fighting is clean, it's above board, we're respecting the other candidates. And I think Penny is showing all of the hallmarks and all of the pedigree right now as a future Prime Minister, who behaves in the right way and who wants to do good things for the country.
James, I do apologise for that loss of sound on my part there. I mean, you've slightly referred to the question I was going to ask you about the negative campaigning that's going on at the moment, the bit of nasty briefing that's going on. I mean, how does she deal with that? You would know her quite well as a person, because it does seem to be that if you want to come forward and unite the party, it's going to be difficult after all of this division that's going on at present.
Yeah, Arlene, I'll raise 2 points very quickly. I think the first thing is that Penny is very resilient. Her backstory, for those that know it, is very persuasive. She paid her way through school, university. Her father's a paratrooper, lost her mother when she was 15 years old. I mean, this is a woman who knows all about what it's like. In terms of the backstory she has, she's a real fighter. So I think she'll breeze through it, is my honest view. But what's interesting for me now, of course, is the fact that these black ops, these dirty tricks that are happening now, they're being targeted at her because she's a threat. And she's polling brilliantly. She's way in front in the polls. She's in second place in the race within the parliamentary party. She's a real threat, and she's going to be the next Prime Minister. But what I would ask everyone to do is to play clean, to play fair. We're all Conservatives. We don't need to be lowering the bar of standards and behaviour. Penny's campaign has been absolutely clean and above the board all the way through. That's the person she is. She's a person of substance, a person of integrity. There's no baggage there. She's clean. And let's get behind her.
James, thank you so much for bearing with us during that little blip there. And thanks for joining us this afternoon. That's James Sunderland. He's the MP who is supporting Penny Mordaunt in her campaign to be the leader and indeed the next Prime Minister of the country. So the government has announced the controversial decision to delay the passage of its flagship online safety bill until September, when a new Prime Minister is in place. The decision has been met with mixed reactions, with many child safety campaigners criticising the move, as they say it leaves young people vulnerable to harmful content for even longer, with others arguing that the bill itself would be a slippery slope towards curbs on freedom of speech. So what could be the implications of the delay? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Sarah Smith from the Breck Foundation, which was founded after 14-year-old Breck Bednar was murdered by an online predator. And Sarah, thank you for joining us this afternoon. First of all, I want you to tell us a little bit about Breck, because I think it's important that we remember him as an individual who lived a very short life, but someone that should be remembered.
Thank you, Arlene. Thank you for having me on today. Yes, I'd love to tell you a bit about Breck. He was a 14-year-old schoolboy whose big passion was gaming, tech. He was very much like any other regular schoolboy that you might come across nowadays. He had a group of friends around him who were into the same sort of things, and he was a top stream student. You know, he was a really smart boy, but unfortunately for Breck, he fell into a situation online where he was befriended by a predator who, over a series of months, in fact for over a year, in the end, talked to him, gained his trust, and eventually lured him to his house, where unfortunately he was brutally murdered. And Breck's mother, Lauren Lefebvre, set up the foundation in order that we can stop this happening to any other child. It's a terrifying and horrifying story, and I tell the story so many times to parents and students, and all react in the same way, which is the horror that it could happen to anyone, which is why we campaign so hard for things like the online safety bill to become law to protect our children.
And Sarah, just on the content of the bill, it has become quite controversial. Do you believe it does what you want it to do? In other words, to protect children like Breck?
I think that the online safety bill is a fantastic start. there's a broad coalition of children's charities and campaigners who believe that it could go further. And indeed, we have been talking to the government about this, of suggestions that would make it even stronger and that would put children right at the heart of the online safety bill. And I think it's really important to note that there are 500,000 average predators online every single day that can make contact with our children. The internet was never designed for children, but nearly all children, 99% of them last year, go online. And it's so important that this bill goes forward. We're not saying it's perfect. There's more that can be done, but it has to start somewhere, and it's already well overdue. It's been 5 years in the making, and the thought that it might not get through in its current form, or that it might be watered down, is dismaying for those of us that campaign for this.
OK, Sarah, thank you for bringing us the story about Breck. I thought it was really important to hear about him, but to also hear about your campaign today. And so, despite calls for more stringent measures in pushing online safety to protect vulnerable members of society from accessing that harmful content, there are many that believe the online safety bill itself is, in fact, a slippery slope towards censorship, and absolutely welcomed the decision to delay it, with Tory leadership contender Kemi Badenoch saying the bill is in no fit state to become law. And joining me in the studio is our own GB News Cultural and Social Affairs editor, Anaya. Anaya, what's your view on the bill, first of all, before we talk about the delay of the bill?
I think that most people would agree that children accessing harmful content, such as content that is encouraging them to towards eating disorders or suicidal ideation, is a problem. I guess the question is, how do we tackle it?
Yeah.
So first and foremost, we have to understand some of the existing legislation. So we have the Malicious Communications Act. We also have laws against harassment and criminal behaviour, and so on. So in that sense, many critics of this bill do believe that a lot of the things that are being suggested as the reason the bill exists is already covered. But what this legislation does is add a new element, and it says legal but harmful. So content that isn't criminal behaviour but is allowed and harmful. What critics worry is that over the last few years we've had an expansion of the definition of harmful. So if we remember, over the COVID-19 pandemic, many people who challenged the government's narrative in relation to COVID-19 mitigation were censored online. You know, the Twitter, Facebook, YouTube removed content because they deemed it to be harmful. Not just that, many social issues around race, transgender issues, feminism and so on, many people find themselves on the sharp end of censorship because it is perceived as harmful to certain groups, which has a chilling effect on free speech. And so I think most people would agree that those issues are a problem, but whether or not we tackle it with this particular measure, which would essentially fine social media companies for not doing enough in the government's view to tackle these issues, I think some people worry that that's handing them even more power than what they already have.
Yeah, I suppose my point of view is that we can do both. We can protect freedom of speech, but also deal with the dreadful online harm that has been caused to people like Breck, and to indeed, unfortunately, so many of our young people across, not just in the UK, of course, right across the world, because that's the nature of the internet. And it is about tackling those algorithms, really, isn't it, that come and you know, seek out young people, and then they target them with their advertising and their content. And it's how we deal with that. And I mean, it's just how we can get to the bottom of that, I think. So it's a balance, isn't it, really, about protecting young people?
Yeah, definitely. I think some people would worry, though, that, you know, we are looking for a kind of quick fix, technocratic solution, which is to a deep-rooted social problem that has existed even before the internet, whether that is people bullying people, targeting young people. And I think that a lot of critics would look at a much broader perspective, whether that's in schools, you know, social services and families, and making sure that parents, for example, have a greater role in overseeing what their children are doing online. You know, I speak to parents who their kids are, you know, on the computer in another room, they have no idea what they're doing for hours a day. And actually, should we be taking more of a responsibility as a society to make sure that kids have that adult authority in the room and clear rules and guidance about how they use the internet? And so I think that there are many different solutions posed, and I think Kemi Badenoch, as she suggested, but also David Davis and other civil liberties organisations such as Big Brother Watch have expressed grave concern that it's far too sweeping, far too broad, and that harm definition really needs to be nailed down.
Yeah, I think there's a middle way through on this. That's just my view. You know, there's a need to deal with the harmful content. And I mean, it is good that the Breck Foundation have been doing some of that educational work with schools and young people about safety online, because I think that's part of what we need to do as well. Anaya, thank you for coming in to discuss what is quite a difficult subject, because, of course, we all want to protect our young people. So you've been watching and listening to The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster. The show's back every Friday from 3 p.m. Up next, it's Nana Akoya.
I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. Temperatures rising through the weekend, peaking early next week. We are talking extreme heat. Unprecedented temperatures are likely, and that is likely to cause problems, hence why we have a Met Office red weather warning in place. The amber warnings have also been extended. We'll see those in just a moment. This area of high pressure is responsible for the fine weather on the way for most, but there is a weather front bringing some showery rain this evening over parts of northeast England and eastern Scotland. They're steadily fading away. For most, it will be a dry night, a clear night, and a pretty comfortable night for sleeping, actually, certainly compared to earlier in the week. Temperatures are likely to drop down to single figures in some spots, and mostly further south into the low teens. So Saturday is then looking like a cracking day for most of England, Wales, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland. Plenty of warm sunshine. There's going to be some rain across northern Scotland. That's going to move across the Northern Isles, and some showers in the far northwest. But otherwise, plenty of strong sunshine, and temperatures are very pleasant, low 20s for the vast majority. Maybe just peaking into the mid to maybe high 20s across parts of the south. Later in the day, we'll see a bit more clouds spilling into Northern Ireland, and the rain could start to just move in here through the evening. The rain will also become a little more extensive across Scotland on Saturday evening. Further south, though, it will be a warm summer's evening and leading to a fine and clear night. We start Sunday, though, with more cloud across Scotland, a little bit of patchy rain. Again, that should clear away to the north, leaving many dry and sunny on Sunday, and it is going to be turning hotter by Sunday afternoon. Temperatures back over 30 Celsius. But going further into next week, the high pressure that's moving in starts to push away to the east, and that allows us to tap into hotter air coming up from Spain and Portugal. We could see 40 Celsius on Tuesday. We are concerned these temperatures are going to cause some problems to people's health, but also the infrastructure, hence why we have that rare red warning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.